Hello, and welcome to another edition of Tradeshift's Paradigm Shift. I'm Jonathan Lawrence, Director of Product Marketing for Tradeshift, and your host for this event. In this three-part series, we're going to talk about the economics of supply chain resilience and whether or not it is as adaptive as it needs to be in a post-COVID world. The title of today's conversation is Returning with Purpose: What a Year and a Half of Remote Work Has Taught Us. In today's session, we are pleased to have Tradeshift's Chief Revenue Officer, Christoph Boden. Christoph joined our company in the middle of the pandemic, and like so many other leaders, he has had to get a handle on the operations, the personalities, and the responsibilities of his global organization, all via Zoom. Now, Christoph is joined by Donna Donato, CEO, Americas Region at ChainIQ. Donna has over 20 years expertise in procurement, strategic relationship management, and complex transactions, and coincidentally, also joined her organization last year remotely during COVID. Now's your chance to tune in as the two of them engage in a lively one-on-one discussion about work, what it was before the pandemic, during it, and most importantly, what we can expect moving forward. How we don't just return, but return with purpose. Now, after they're done, come back and join me for a quick recap. Over to you, Christoph.
Welcome, everybody, to today's session. I'm Christoph Boden, Chief Revenue Officer at Tradeshift, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Donna Donato. As Jonathan said, she's Chief Executive Officer of ChainIQ in the Americas. Donna, you and I know each other. The two companies are great partners. But it's probably and maybe not the case for everybody that is viewing us today. Tell us a bit more about ChainIQ and what you guys doing.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me in this fireside chat. It's really nice to get to know you and your audience a little bit better, and appreciate the partnership that we have between our companies. ChainIQ is a leading independent procurement services company. So if you think about strategic sourcing as a great lever to unlock the value for many enterprises around the world, we sit at the heart, of that equation. We live and breathe strategic sourcing, understanding the complex ecosystems of suppliers, the processes, and the humans and technologies, that you need to bring to the table in order to drive significant value for our customers. So we focus on indirect spend across multiple industries, and we focus on how to make our customers successful.
Great to have you as partner on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. That's really a great partnership that we have together. So let's talk about a bit COVID and the pandemic. Of course, everybody talks about how suddenly we became vulnerable of manual processes and how the technology helped us going through the pandemic and even on the tail end of it. Hopefully, it's the tail end of it. So we're not going to talk about that too much, because I think that this topic has been talked about too long and too often. When you and I were chatting prior to this fireside chat here, you said something that really resonated with me, and I'm pretty sure it's going to resonate a lot with the audience. You said, well, it's not about returning. It's about returning with a purpose. That suddenly, I had that big light bulb moment. The first question I have for you, or mutual thoughts on, is, can you inject purpose into an existing DNA, or you have to have it from prior to the pandemic within the company because you cannot inject it? What's your perspective on the injectability of the purpose?
That's a great question. I think when you and I were chatting, we were reflecting on what have we learned, right? And I think this last year has been a tremendous year of reflection. I call it it was an unplanned, but to some extent necessary reset across multiple human domains, corporate domains, everything in your life, family, how we operate, where we spend time. So when we think of what COVID really accelerated, for us in so many ways, in the business world, we do talk about the digital transformation, acceptance of the digital journey that a lot of companies might have been on, but really embrace it after. And now when the conversation is about a return, there's so many great questions, and I thought what For me, in particular, COVID, in the last 18 months have done is reevaluation, right? So what could we be more effective at as a company? What do our customers really value with the limited time that we have? What does it mean for workers? What does it mean for our life and family and work balance integration? So this concept of purpose and intentionality is really important. So when we talk about return with purpose, I think it crosses all dimensions, right, of our life. Now, let me take, this specifically to company DNA and culture. I have, like, my brother-in-law is a doctor who is, in the hospital and, fighting and, for the lives of his patients and supporting them. So there's a clear purpose in what he is doing, right? And I have another friend that's supporting, communities in Haiti right now. So in some professions, it's so easy to identify with the purpose of humanity, but it doesn't mean that in our corporate worlds, our purpose is diminished. I truly believe that in everything that we do as individuals, as teams, as corporation, purpose could be and must be defined, right? Purpose is what unites, it what energizes, it what gives direction. So I think if a company is not clear on its purpose, I think it's missing an opportunity. Going back to your initial point that this last 18 months have been the months of serious reevaluation. If the companies have not evaluated what their purpose and how relevant it is, this is the time to do it.
Relevant to the new reality that we all facing and we're all learning through, because I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of things in front of us that will change, for hopefully the better, the way that we conduct business and how we conduct ourselves as a human being. So of course, as a corporation, one of our objectives is, profit, revenue. You and I carry numbers. We run forecast call. It's very number oriented. Great. How do you marry and have that sense of purpose with that objective, which is, essentially financial objective? How can you mix them and get them to work hand in hand versus one against the other? What's your experience at ChainIQ and with all the people that you have around you?
I definitely believe that purpose and profitability don't have to be at odds, right? Mm-hmm. So as I think it was about 2 years ago, the Business Roundtable kind of redeclared, the purpose of a corporation and with its consciousness, to both the stakeholders, employers, the broader economy, suppliers, right? So I think as a society, we're also elevating the purpose of the business, that we're all in every day. So when you think about, ChainIQ and Tradeshift, we're in the business of buying and selling, right? We're creating the marketplaces, we're creating and strengthening ecosystems for our customers to have a sustainable, resilient business. So our purpose is to provide the value to our customers in a sustainable way. And we have an amazing opportunity also to do it while impacting small businesses, diverse businesses who have suffered, tremendously over the last 18 months. So a purpose, you could find in so many different ways of working. And it doesn't have to be the cost of profit, growing some, an economy or microeconomy, or creating efficiency for our clients, is purposeful because it has a trickle-down effect, to the community of suppliers, employees, and overall business that they're in.
Yeah, I think you're saying something super important, which is the purpose drives the outcome that we desire. Don't let the outcome drive the purpose that you have, or getting them at odds, which obviously is the worst that can happen. But for us at Tradeshift, our vision is to, give an economic growth opportunity for all on the network. And you said that about marketplace, and this is where both companies are looking at the same thing and having the same overall vision, overall purpose. And then good things happen when you follow your purpose. You said something about human beings and human nature. I want to dive in on this one. Well, you and I probably remember the first days of the pandemic and all the interesting behavior, we're going to call them that way, that it drove in people. I remember when toilet paper was, more expensive than gold almost, and that you couldn't find pasta, and people were grabbing those, and that was an interesting time. What is it that as a society We need to learn from that because it didn't bring all the time the best in us, and that we can carry that forward. What's your view on this issue?
I feel like, we've panicked. We've panicked in a moment, and kind of the primal instincts almost kicked in. And we didn't step back, in that moment to understand, the broader implications and maybe our overall responsibility, right, in the society. So, but why, when I think about like, so why did that happen? We had no visibility. We dealt with something that was unprecedented. We had no data or insight, right? We were kind of blind in the dark. So for me, actually, there are two elements. There's that human element, right, of don't panic. Let's, understand and be what can we plan for, in advance, lessons learned, et cetera. But then there's another element, that I think accelerated our ability to be effective in a panicky situation is the data, right, and the insights, and all the digitization that we're talking about that really kind of had a breakthrough in the last 18 months. So that allows us now to react, faster, that allows us to be more maybe predictable, in the way how we might react or plan for kind of unplanned. So, although of course last year has been so challenging, it I think blew all kinds of models up, in terms of when you talk about redundancy, business continuity. I think all of those plans have been revisited since then. And we went from kind of just-in-time models with redundancy, built into I'm going to really kind of plan, and de-risk my supply chain, de-risk my operations, more than I ever thought of.
It's funny because remember we were no stocks, no inventories, really lean manufacturing. Well, actually that didn't end well for us, right? So now people are thinking, okay, how much inventory do I need to keep of things at home and in various inventory? So it really changed the way that we think about the entire supply chain, and you and I are every day into supply chain issues. Tricky question here. If it happened again, with what we learned, do you think that we'll react the same way, or there will be different ways of reacting?
I think we've learned a lot, right? But the human nature is still hopefully more level-headed in some ways. But and I think there's some heroics also done to restore a lot of services, find science, that we absolutely needed. I think we'll probably step into the unknown with much more confidence, in the future of unprecedented circumstances. And we have, again, more lessons learned, more data, and know that we're resilient as well. I think as a society, as the world, kind of overall economy, there's still a lot of work to be done. There's not enough equity, in this world, and access to supplies, capital, and we're talking about vaccines, et cetera, that needs to be, fixed, between our developed world and underdeveloped countries. But we're learning every day.
Yeah,
on just something you mentioned, I don't want to go back, is in the human reaction to certain things. I actually also think it highlighted something that you and I live every day. The buying and selling process, despite of all the fantastic technology, is still a human process, right? In a way that whenever, in the sourcing process, we introduce a new supplier or a customer is ready to make that purchase, it's a human decision still in a lot of ways. And our job is to provide confidence in that decision, that it is the right supplier, it's the right scope, it's the right price, So when I think of Chain IQ and the value we bring is to give confidence to our clients in making those right decisions, right? In addition to the financial value and, innovation and other benefits from that relationship. And I think with Tradeshift, getting the insights and data and that, the index that you publish, is all of the intelligence, that goes into making that decision more confidently, because we're humans, so, but the combination of the human data and technology is quite powerful.
Yeah, I know, but people think about, oh, there is B2B and C2C and B2C. And at the end of the day, it's people number one talking to people number two and making a decision to build something together, right? At the end of the day, it's a human process. Buying and selling things is and you use the word relation. That's a relationship thing. Is that I look at you, Donna, and do I trust you that you can deliver? Do you trust me that I can deliver? And this is how decisions are made. And we had to make those decisions remotely. So let's talk about a bit remote and how it changes. The reason why essentially we were or are going in an office and at least getting physically together is because it helps the flow of information, formally or informally at the water cooler or the coffee machine, depending on where you are. How do you do that in that, two-dimensional, only the top of the body being visible in not only in the office but also with the external world? What have you seen change in the way that we quote unquote manage or lead and coach people through the process? What has changed for you here?
We almost have to accept that things are not going to be the same, right? I think the world has changed and shifted, to something more where this hybrid integrated, work life for good. When I was reflecting on your question now, like, so how do you recreate it? I think of two different things. I think we got really efficient actually at a lot of things, right? Because when you go into office, you build in some white space time and, bump into people, have conversations and lunch. And what you do, you build connections. Those are not necessarily communications, but they're connections that, help build relationships and, give you those deposits, in the relationship that you can draw on, right? Now, in terms of the communication, though, I feel like with the remote work, we're much more deliberate in our communications. It forced me to up my game. I joined ChainIQ during, COVID. So it was a year ago. So I had to get to know the team virtually. I had to make sure that my messaging about where we're going, what we're doing, were clear, and I would over communicate it. So it forced me to up my game, big time in terms of the communication. I miss the connection though. It's kind of that human, connection that definitely has dividend. And you discover things about people that you wouldn't have otherwise, done on a scheduled Zoom call. So we have to blend this. And when I'm talking about return to office now, with my team, I said it's flexibility was the purpose. I understand that we became really efficient in certain things. And I understand how important it is to be able to figure out how to manage work-life, balances and what's important to employees. But at the same time, that connection and relationship still matters. And we have to figure out, we're not just randomly showing up at the office just to check the box for 2 days, 3 days a week, but we're there, we have a team event, we have a project review, we have a collaboration session, so it forces us to rethink, I think, how we go back in order to not lose sight of the good and take advantage of everything that's new emerged in our ways of working.
Such an important point. We're experiencing a bit of a return to the office right now. I'm going to be on the road for the first time in a year and a half, but you do it on purpose. You're not doing it because, hey, I have to go to the office, or hey, I have to meet with customers. No, I'm going to do that because there is really a desired outcome, but there is a purpose. It helps us being a lot more focused on what is it that we're trying to achieve here, right? That has eliminated a lot of the waste that we had in the past. Suddenly discovering that you don't need to spend half of your life in the plane to conduct business. It can be conducted in a different way. You talked a lot about the digital world and digitalization. Of course, it's on everybody's mind. I came across a stat not long ago, which really was initially surprising and then made sense. It's 197,000, almost 200,000 people type, "Is a robot going to take my job?" into their search engine every month. So there is a real worry, it's that old thing that the machine are going to take over, right? Is there a risk? Should people be worried about that, especially in the context of supply chain and everyday work? I mean, it's amazing. 200,000 people every month typing, is a robot going to take my job in Google? That's scary.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
I could, sense the anxiety, I guess, but it's those numbers, as you mentioned. So, although I wonder, do they also have to type "I'm not a robot" into the computer to validate their identity? But jokes aside, look, as a society, right, around the world, we've gone through industrial revolution, digital revolution, and we go through change, and change is scary, right? And the answer is probably yes. Some jobs will be automated. We're not in a status quo. We are progressing as an economy, as a society. But again, it's a normal human reaction to feel anxiety about that. What I do think, though, is really exciting this time around, how empowering it is to be an employee. And what I mean by this is that in the past, we used to have more, I think, expectation that your manager will manage your career, that, and I think employers for the longest time tried to shift that and say, employees, you really have to be interested in developing yourself and take initiative. And, learning was not democratized, but now it's democratized. You could learn so much from watching YouTube videos and LinkedIn Learning and so many other sources. So while, yes, the world is changing and employers have to create the space for their employees to learn and be that learning community, supporting employees to do that. But I really think that employees have the responsibility and opportunity, most importantly, to evolve, in this world and hopefully conquer the fear and discover something new.
To your point, now we can access every piece of information almost in anywhere in the world. The only barrier can be language, but I don't even anymore. I was actually doing a few fun stuff over the weekend where I came across a Finnish site, and I don't speak Finnish, but Google Translate was just fine, and I could exactly know what they were talking about. It was about ice hockey, nothing that is related to to our purpose.
How appropriate.
That's much more related to my family. Last question. I can't believe that it's almost 30 minutes that we've been talking. You touch on it about more than touch, the upskilling, training, learning. And you talked about YouTube and all of and LinkedIn Learning and all that kind of good stuff. Should company invest or create the space and the time for people to learn, or a mixture of both? You said it, right? In changes, you have to learn new skills and new capability. Should we give people time to do it, or should we, like in the old days, I'm not sure they were good or bad, give them access to the learning sessions? What's your perspective?
When I think about some of the training sessions that I've had over my 20 plus, career, some were fantastic, and some were, I'm sure many of us, probably like, what am I doing here? So I like the idea of taking control of the learning with the right guidance, right? From your leader, HR, your out of, office network. But I do think companies should create that space and the time for employees to develop. It's in our best interest. I want people with growth mindset. I want people who want to learn, who want to take initiative, and I want to support them there. That will be, I feel like, the employer, should be, I strongly believe actually, that should be the employer position in order to attract and retain the best talent, and also, create the right culture that produces highest results.
Thank you so much. That's I think a great way to end our conversation. We could have gone on for hours and hours, but thinking about how we empower people, guide them to a certain extent, but help them by giving them time and space and access to the right resources that will get them to learn things. After all, I don't know about you, but I'm enjoying myself at work and in the personal life as well when I learn something new, right? And routine is not fun and is not really a good way. Thank you so much, Donna. It was great having you for the past 30 minutes. I hope that we'll have the opportunity to meet in person at some point.
Looking forward to it already.
All right. And on that note, I give it back to Jonathan to sum it up for us.
Thank you, Christophe and Donna. That was quite the conversation. Now, to recap, we heard about how they experienced the early days of the pandemic, how it caused them to reevaluate their sense of purpose, both personally and professionally, and how they brought that new energy to their teams and to their work. You know, gang, it's fascinating to look back at events and actions through the lens of human nature. As Christoph and Donna pointed out, it actually brought the best and the worst out in us, from panic buying of household items to the unprecedented global effort to bring about a vaccine. Now, I hope you'll join us for our next session, where we'll be hearing John Carls and Subrata Govil of the Tradeshift product team, and Jason Bush, founder of Azul Partners and Spend Matters. They'll be talking about the importance of transparency and data in supply chains and the role that digitalization plays in creating resilience. Now, you really don't want to miss out on this discussion. But for now, on behalf of Tradeshift, thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.